The vast alien fleet hung in the darkness beyond Jupiter's orbit like a swarm of steel predators. Admiral Kex of the Vorthan Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth through the viewing screens. The small blue planet looked so fragile, so defenseless. Intelligence reports showed the humans had barely mastered spaceflight. Their weapons were primitive, their military forces scattered across their single world. A perfect target, Kex thought to himself. The Vorthan Empire had conquered 47 star systems in the past century. Each victory had been swift and decisive. The pattern never changed. Arrive in overwhelming force, destroy their orbital defenses, land-ground troops, and accept surrender within days. The humans would be no different. Commander Vex approached the Admiral's station. "Sir, all battle groups report ready. 3,000 ships await your command." Kex nodded slowly. The humans had detected their approach weeks ago. Every radio transmission from Earth showed increasing panic. Their leaders held emergency meetings. Their military forces scrambled to prepare defenses that would prove useless against Vorthan technology. "Have they attempted to communicate?" Kex asked. "Yes, sir. Hundreds of messages in their primitive languages. Our translators have decoded most of them. The usual mix of threats, pleas for mercy, and offers to negotiate." The Admiral scaled. Lips curled into what passed for a smile among his species. Every conquered species followed the same pattern. First came defiance, then fear, then desperate bargaining, and finally submission. The humans were already showing signs of the second phase. On the tactical display, Earth's pathetic defenses came into view. A few dozen space stations. Several 100 military ships that couldn't match even one Vorthan frigate. Ground-based missile systems that might as well be throwing rocks at their advanced shields. "Their response is actually weaker than expected," Vex observed. "The Centauri colonies put up more resistance." Kex studied the readings carefully. Something felt different about this conquest, though he couldn't identify what. The humans seemed to be following the standard pattern of a doomed species, yet there was an unusual quality to their communications. Where other species had begged or threatened, many human messages contained something else entirely. "What is our estimated casualty count for the invasion?" The Admiral asked. "Negligible, sir. Perhaps a dozen ships damaged, none destroyed. Ground forces estimate complete planetary control within 72 hours. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, preparing for what would be the Empire's 48th conquest. Weapon systems charged, landing craft prepared for deployment. Communication arrays stood ready to broadcast the standard surrender demands. But as Kex watched the small planet growing larger on his screens, an unexpected transmission reached the flagship. Unlike the previous human communications, this one came on a narrow beam directed specifically at the command vessel. The message was brief, transmitted in perfect Vorthan language that should have been impossible for the humans to know. "Vorthan Fleet, this is Commander Smith of Earth Defense. We request immediate communication with your senior command staff regarding terms of engagement." The bridge fell silent. Vex looked at his instruments in confusion. How did they learn? Our language? Our communication protocols? Kex felt the first stirring of unease. In 47 previous conquests, no species had ever spoken their language. Most barely understood the concept of surrender when it was explained to them through crude translation programs. "Trace that signal," the Admiral ordered. "Find its origin point." The response came quickly. "Sir, the transmission originated from a small facility in what the humans call North America. The building appears to be an educational institution." "A school?" Kex's confusion deepened. "They're communicating from a school?" Another message arrived, again in flawless Vorthan. "We are prepared to discuss the terms of our engagement. However, we suggest you might want to reconsider your current approach. The Admiral stared at the communication panel. No conquered species had ever suggested the mighty Vorthan Empire reconsider anything. The audacity was unprecedented, yet something in the human's tone gave him pause. "Sir," Vex whispered, "should we respond to their communication?" Kex found himself hesitating for the first time in his military career. Standard protocol demanded they ignore all enemy communications until after bombardment began. Yet something about this situation felt fundamentally different from their previous conquests. The human called. Smith was still transmitting. "Admiral Kex, we know you're listening. Before you begin your attack, there's something about humanity you should understand. Something that might change your perspective on this entire operation." The Admiral's blood ran cold. The human knew his name. Admiral Kex stared at the communication panel, his scaled hands trembling slightly. Commander Smith's voice came through clearly, speaking Vorthan with an accent that suggested years of study, not the crude attempts of a translation program. "Admiral, I know this is confusing for you. Your species has never encountered anything like us before. But before you make any decisions you might regret, let me share something with you." Vex moved closer to his commander. "Sir, this could be some kind of trap. Perhaps they captured one of our scouts." "Impossible," Kex replied. "We haven't lost any ships in this sector for decades." The human continued. "You're wondering how we learned your language, how we know your name, your ship classifications, your battle formations. The answer is simpler than you think, Admiral. We've been watching you." "Watching us?" Kex couldn't hide his shock. "From where?" "Your species hasn't left this system." "That's what you think?" Smith replied calmly. "Admiral, what do you know about the Vorthan conquest of the Altair system 37 years ago?" Kex felt his blood freeze. The Altair conquest was classified information, known only to high-ranking military officers. It had been one of their most brutal campaigns, involving the complete destruction of a peaceful species that had refused to surrender. "How do you know about Altair?" he demanded. "Because we were there, Admiral. Not physically, of course. But we were watching. We've been watching all 47 of your conquests." Commander Vex checked his instruments frantically. "Sir, there are no human ships in this system, except their primitive defense craft. No monitoring stations, no hidden bases." Smith's voice carried a hint of amusement. "You're looking in the wrong places, Commander Vex. Tell me, have you ever wondered about the small objects that sometimes appear in your sensor readings? The ones your technicians dismiss as space debris or sensor ghosts?" The Admiral's mind raced. There had been such readings throughout their military campaigns. Tiny objects that appeared and disappeared from their scopes, too small to be ships, too regular to be natural phenomena. Standard protocol was to ignore them. "Those objects," Kex said slowly, "they were yours?" "Not ours exactly, but built by—" "You see, Admiral, while your species was busy conquering systems, humanity was busy with a different kind of expansion. We sent tiny probes to every corner of the galaxy, not to claim territory, but to observe, to learn, to understand." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. If the humans were telling the truth, it meant their every military action had been recorded, studied, analyzed by a species they'd considered primitive. "Why?" Vex asked. "Why watch us instead of expanding your own empire?" "Because we learned something long ago that your species hasn't figured out yet," Smith replied. "True power doesn't come from conquest. It comes from knowledge." On the tactical display, Earth continued its slow rotation, looking as defenseless as ever. But Kex was beginning to understand that appearances could be deceiving. "You want to know what we learned from watching your 47 conquests?" Smith continued. "We learned your weaknesses, your tactics, Your psychology. We know exactly how you think. Admiral Kex, we know that right now you're calculating whether to proceed with the attack or retreat to gather more information. The Admiral's breath caught. That was exactly what he was thinking. We also know about the Vorthan Empire's greatest secret, Smith said quietly. The one your high command doesn't want your military to discover. What secret? Kex demanded, though part of him dreaded the answer. The real reason you conquer worlds, Admiral. It's not for resources or territory. It's because your home system is dying, and you need new worlds to relocate your population before your star burns out. The bridge fell completely silent. This information was known only to the highest levels of government, classified beyond. Even Admiral-level clearance. How could you possibly know that? Kex whispered. Because we didn't just watch your military campaigns, Admiral. We watched everything. Your science expeditions. Your secret colonization surveys. Your desperate search for habitable worlds that could support Vorthan life. Smith paused, letting the implications sink in. Here's what I'm offering you, Admiral Kex. Instead of trying to conquer Earth and failing catastrophically, why don't we discuss a different arrangement? One that could solve your species' survival problem without unnecessary bloodshed. Kex found himself leaning forward, despite his training telling him this was impossible. What kind of arrangement? The kind where everybody wins, Admiral. But first, you need to understand exactly what humanity is capable of. Admiral Kex gripped the edge of his command console as Smith's words echoed through the bridge. The humans' offer of cooperation sounded reasonable, but 47 successful conquests had taught him to be suspicious of any species that didn't immediately surrender. You claim to understand our capabilities, Kex said carefully, but you've never faced a Vorthan fleet in direct combat. Your observations mean nothing when plasma cannons start firing. Smith's response came with what sounded like genuine sadness. Admiral, that's exactly what the Kepler colony administrators said 3 years ago, right before you glassed their entire planet. Another classified operation. Kex felt sweat beading on his scaled forehead despite the cool bridge temperature. The Kepler incident was necessary, he said defensively. They refused all surrender terms. They refused because they knew surrender meant slavery for their children and death for their elderly. We watched that too, Admiral. Every minute of it. On his tactical display, Kex noticed something that made his blood run cold. Tiny sensor contacts were appearing throughout his fleet formation. Hundreds of them, too small to be ships, moving in patterns that defied explanation. Commander Vex, he whispered, are you seeing this? Vex stared at his instruments in horror. Sir, unknown contacts throughout the fleet. They're everywhere. Smith's voice continued calmly. Those are just the ones we're letting you see, Admiral. We've had monitoring devices attached to every ship in your fleet since you left Vorthan space 2 months ago. The bridge erupted in chaos. Officers ran diagnostics, checked weapon systems, tried to lock onto the mysterious objects that seemed to phase in and out of existence. Impossible, Kex breathed. Our security protocols would have detected any foreign objects. Would they? Smith asked. Tell me, Admiral, what do you know about quantum phase technology? Kex's military training included briefings on theoretical advanced technologies, but quantum phase manipulation was considered impossible even by Vorthan scientists. Theoretical at best, he replied. No species has successfully achieved stable quantum phase shifts. No species you've conquered, Smith corrected. But then again, Admiral, you've been conquering the wrong civilizations. The tactical display suddenly flickered and changed. Instead of showing Kex's fleet surrounding Earth, it now displayed a 3-dimensional map of the entire galaxy. Thousands of star systems glowed in different colors, connected by flowing lines of light. What is this? Vex demanded. This is what we call the real galaxy, Commander, Smith explained. The yellow systems are civilizations like yours, expanding through conquest, unaware of the larger picture. The blue systems are what we call observers, species that chose knowledge over territory. The red systems are something else entirely. Kex studied the display with growing unease. The Vorthan Empire's conquered systems appeared as tiny yellow dots scattered across one small section of the galaxy. But the blue systems were everywhere, interconnected in a vast network that spanned the entire galactic disk. You're saying there's been a galactic civilization this entire time? He asked. Not one civilization, Admiral. Thousands of them, all connected through shared knowledge rather than military conquest. While your species was busy fighting wars, we were busy learning from every other species that made the same choice. The red systems on the display pulsed ominously. Kex counted at least 50 of them, scattered throughout the galaxy in seemingly random locations. What are the red systems? Smith's voice grew serious. Those are civilizations that chose neither conquest nor observation. They chose something much more dangerous. They chose isolation and absolute power. As Kex watched, several red systems began moving on the display, converging slowly toward different sections of the galaxy. They're moving, he whispered. Yes, Admiral. And one of them is heading toward the Vorthan home system. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of instruments. Kex felt the weight of implications crashing down on him. His species had been playing a small, local game while vast forces moved across the galaxy. How long do we have? He asked quietly. Your home star will begin its death cycle in approximately 40 years, Smith replied. The red system approaching. Your territory will arrive in approximately 30 years. That gives you 10 years to evacuate your entire species. Evacuation to where? Every habitable world in our region is already claimed or unsuitable for Vorthan life. That's where our arrangement comes in, Admiral. The Observer Network has identified over 300 uninhabited worlds suitable for Vorthan colonization. Worlds that could support your entire population comfortably. Kex stared at the galactic display, seeing his species' future laid out in stark clarity. Conquest had been their way of survival, but it had blinded them to the true nature of the galaxy. What do you want in return? Smith's answer would change everything. We want you to stop conquering and start observing. The galaxy is about to face something that will require every species working together. Admiral Kex stared at the galactic display, his mind struggling to process the scale of what Smith had revealed. The red systems pulsed like infected wounds across the star map, and their movement patterns suggested coordination on a level that defied comprehension. What exactly are we facing? Kex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Smith's response carried the weight of ancient knowledge. We call them the Devourers, Admiral. They're the reason the Observer Network exists in the first place. The tactical display shifted, zooming in on one of the red systems. What Kex saw made his blood freeze. The entire system was dark. No stars, no planets, just empty space where a solar system should have been. They don't conquer worlds, Admiral, Smith explained. They consume them, completely. Stars, planets, asteroids, even the space dust. They leave nothing behind but empty void. Commander Vex leaned forward, studying the readings. Sir, according to this data, that system contained over 12 billion inhabitants just 50 years ago. Contained is the right word, Commander. Smith replied grimly. The Devourers don't discriminate between military and civilian targets. They don't negotiate or accept surrender. They simply consume everything that contains useful matter or energy. Kex felt the foundations of his worldview crumbling. The Vorthan Empire prided itself on its military might, but how could any force fight an enemy that could devour entire star systems? How long have you known about them? He asked, Humanity discovered the first evidence of devourer activity 200 years ago, Smith replied. That's when we made our choice to become observers instead of conquerors. We realized that any species focused on fighting each other would be helpless when the real threat arrived. The galactic map shifted again, showing historical data. Kex watched in horror as red systems moved across the galaxy like a slow plague, leaving empty space in their wake. Hundreds of civilizations had simply vanished from existence. The Observer Network formed as a response to this threat, Smith continued. Every species that joined contributed their knowledge, their technology, their unique perspectives on how to survive what's coming. And the conqueror species? Kex asked, though he dreaded the answer. Look at the historical data, Admiral. The display showed the fate of various military empires throughout galactic history. The Keth Dominion, which had conquered 60 systems, lasted 3 days against a single devourer fleet. The Vextar Republic, masters of plasma weaponry, were consumed in less than a week. Every conqueror species that encountered the devourers was destroyed, Smith said quietly. Not defeated, consumed entirely. Their technology, their knowledge, their very atoms became fuel for the devourer advance. Kex studied his own fleet on the display, 3,000 ships that had seemed invincible just hours ago. Now they looked like toys compared to the cosmic forces at work around them. Why are you telling us this? He asked. Why not let us continue our conquests until we face them ourselves? Because, Admiral, we need every species to survive what's coming. The devourer force approaching this galactic sector is larger than anything we've faced before. They've consumed over 1,000 systems in the past century, growing stronger with each victory. The display zoomed out to show the approaching devourer fleet. It wasn't just large, it was massive beyond comprehension, stretching across multiple star systems like a living darkness. How do you fight something like that? Vex whispered. You don't fight it, Commander, Smith replied. You outsmart it. The Observer Network has been preparing for this encounter for over a century. We've developed technologies the devourers have never seen, strategies they can't predict. What kind of technologies? Kex demanded. The kind that requires cooperation between thousands of species, each contributing their unique capabilities. Vorthan plasma technology, combined with human quantum systems, enhanced by Alterian energy manipulation, guided by Centauri computational power. Kex realized the scope of what Smith was proposing. You want us to abandon everything we've built, everything we believe in, to join this network? I want your species to survive, Admiral. The choice is simple. Join the Observer Network and help us prepare for the Devourer arrival, or continue your current path and face extinction when they reach Vorthan space. The bridge fell silent as Kex contemplated the decision that would determine his species' fate. Through the viewing screens, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, but he now understood that this small blue world was connected to a galactic civilization, far more advanced than anything he had imagined. If we agree to this arrangement, he said slowly, what happens to our fleet, our military? Smith's answer carried both hope and warning. Your military becomes part of something much larger, Admiral. Part of the only force in the galaxy that has ever successfully resisted the Devourers. But first, you need to understand exactly what you're signing up for. Asterisk Admiral Kex stood motionless on his bridge, the weight of galactic history pressing down on him. The choice before him would reshape not just his species' future, but potentially the fate of every living being in the galaxy. Show me, he said, quietly. Show me what joining the Observer Network really means. The tactical display transformed once more, but this time it showed something that defied every law of physics Kex understood. The entire galactic map began to pulse with synchronized light, as if the stars themselves were breathing in unison. What you're seeing, Admiral, is the true power of cooperation, Smith explained. Every observer species has contributed something unique to our collective defense. The result is a galactic communication network that operates faster than light itself. Kex watched in amazement as information flowed between star systems instantly, connecting thousands of civilizations in real-time coordination. The Devourers have never faced anything like this, Smith continued. They're used to consuming isolated worlds, scattered empires, species fighting alone. They've never encountered a galaxy that can think and act as one. But how is this possible? Commander Vex asked. Instant communication across galactic distances violates every known principle of spacetime. It does, Smith agreed. Unless you understand something the Devourers never learned, that consciousness itself can transcend physical limitations when properly networked. The display zoomed in on Earth, showing the small facility for which Smith was broadcasting. But now Kex could see it wasn't just a school. It was a node in a vast network of similar facilities, scattered across every observer world. Every participating species maintains communication nodes, like this one, Smith explained. When activated simultaneously, they create what we call a consciousness field, a shared awareness that spans the entire galaxy. Kex felt his understanding of reality shifting. You're saying the observer network is alive? In a way, yes. When the consciousness field is fully active, every participating species becomes part of a single galactic mind. Individual thoughts remain private, but strategic awareness is shared instantly across all member civilizations. The implications were staggering. Kex realized he wasn't just being asked to join an alliance. He was being invited to become part of a galactic consciousness that could coordinate the defense of billions of worlds simultaneously. The last time we activated the full network was 50 years ago, Smith continued, when a Devourer fleet threatened the Andromeda contact point. Watch what happened. The display showed the encounter, a massive Devourer force approaching a cluster of observer worlds. Then, in an instant that seemed to freeze time itself, every star in that sector pulsed with the same light. When the pulse faded, the Devourer fleet had simply stopped. They weren't destroyed, Smith explained. They were confused. For the first time in their existence, they encountered prey that could think faster than they could consume. The consciousness field allowed us to predict and counter every move they made, sometimes before they made it themselves. Kex stared at the frozen Devourer ships on the display. What happened to them? They retreated. For the first time in recorded history, Devourers actually withdrew from a target system. But Admiral, that was just a scouting force. The fleet approaching our sector now is 100 times larger. The display returned to show the approaching darkness, the massive Devourer armada that stretched across multiple star systems, growing larger as it consumed everything in its path. This is why we need every species, Admiral, Smith said urgently. The consciousness field's power increases exponentially with each participating civilization. Your species' unique neural patterns could provide exactly the computational boost we need to coordinate our defense. Kex looked around his bridge at officers who had spent their careers conquering worlds, now faced with the choice to become part of something far greater than any empire. If we join this network, he asked slowly, what happens to individual Vorthan identity? You remain who you are, Admiral. But when the network activates, you'll also be part of something magnificent, a galactic mind capable of protecting every living world from the ancient darkness. As if responding to Smith's words, the stars visible through the bridge windows began to pulse with that same synchronized light. One by one, observer worlds across the galaxy were joining the consciousness field, preparing for the battle to come. Admiral, Smith's voice carried both hope and urgency. The network is activating. Now, the Devourers are closer than we thought. We need your decision. Kex looked at his fleet, his officers, his life's work of conquest and domination. Then he looked at the vast network of light, connecting civilizations across the galaxy in common purpose. All ships, he announced to his fleet, stand down from attack formation. We have a new mission. As Admiral Kex spoke his agreement to join the Observer Network, every star in the visible galaxy pulsed once, twice, 3 times, and then went completely silent. The final battle for galactic survival was about to begin. The end asterisk.